Hello, and welcome back to Randomly Generated Conversations. I'm Wesley Sellers. I have my son Bastion Sellers with me. And today we have a special guest. My brother, Galen Sellers, will be joining us.
Hello.
This is the podcast where we take randomly generated topics and we see where the conversation goes from there. Remember that this podcast is available on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, as well as Spotify. If you're listening to it on Spotify, there's a poll that we would like you to participate in. Usually relates to one of the topics that we talked about, as well as leave a comment. Let us know what we can do, what you like about it, and where we can improve. All right, so today's topics are, have you traveled to any different countries, and which ones? Camels, dogs, what defines a sport? Is fishing a sport? How about video game tournaments? And what benefit do you bring to the group when you hang out with friends? All right, so have you traveled to any different countries, and which ones? This should be an easy one for Bastion to start with.
I don't know my countries. I failed geography. I didn't do the best in geography, so I don't really know. So
Traveling through New Mexico was not traveling to a different country.
dang it.
No, you haven't traveled to any countries yet.
I've traveled to England, to Canada, and to Mexico.
How long have you visited us for? I a lot of the times, I know when we were kids, we went to Mexico, more to the border town, as well as to the borders of Canada. I don't know, I've gone beyond those borders.
It was within like 60 miles of the border for those two. But for England, I was over there for a couple of years.
Oh, awesome. What are some things that you may have liked or disliked about England? Nothing about the people or whatever,
Right.
everywhere but what are some things that may have differed, whether it's climate or rules?
It rains all the time there, and coming from a desert, getting used to raining all the time, getting used to a wet stripe up your back when you're riding a bike.
Oh, that doesn't sound very comfortable. I can imagine that. I can imagine the cold is much worse. So being from a dry desert where we live now, even just spending time down in Dallas area, when it did get cold down there and it would rain, you didn't thaw out right away. Here in the desert, you go inside and it's like you weren't even outside. There, it just lingered in your body with all the humidity and the wetness.
Yes, very much so. 70 degrees there is a lot different than 70 degrees here.
Yes, 100%. It works on both scales, the cold and the heat, right? Once you have humidity and you add in the rain, 100 degrees in Arizona is not the same as 100 degrees down in Houston.
No.
And 50 degrees in Dallas area is very different than 50 degrees here.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine probably similar to that, maybe a little more extreme over there in England then, being that they're an island, correct?
Correct. The other thing is, majority of the population smokes. Or they did it in the 90s when I was over there.
Mm-hmm. I think it was common over there, but that was a common thing in a lot of places. I remember going into restaurants and them asking you if you wanted smoking or non-smoking seats. Mm-hmm. And I would always wonder, who wants the smoking seats? I mean, I can see if they're asking me if I want my meat smoked or not, but not to go over there and sit and breathe in somebody's secondhand smoke. Even if you're a smoker, I don't understand, I guess so that you can smoke while you're eating, but I still don't see an appeal to breathing in everybody else's smoke while you're there inside a restaurant.
Yeah.
And you haven't had to experience that much,
No,
right?
I haven't.
Probably the only place that you've been where there's really been smoking inside a building has been to Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Within the casinos.
Yeah, I was really young when that, not really young, but I was younger. I remember like parts of stuff. So
that brings up another question. Is there any place here still where smoking is still allowed within a restaurant area or hospitality environment.
It used to be that it was allowed in private clubs. I don't know if it still is.
Okay.
You know, where you have to pay a cover to go in.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be, but I think the Indoor Clean Air Act, I think we're as strict as California now, to where no indoor establishment.
Okay. I know Utah's that way, but how about in the United States itself? Are there states that still allow smoking in
Yes.
restaurants?
Yeah.
Or
Most
is it a nationwide
most
change?
states are moving away from it. And I think most restaurants are moving away from it. But if you go into a bar and say you're going in there for whether a drink or whether for a meal, whatever, outside of Utah, a lot of bars still allow smoking.
Right, but those are usually age-restricted establishments too, though,
Right.
as opposed to family-oriented restaurants.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked up regulations lately. I just remember that's how it used to be, and then there's been a change. And I don't think that's just specific here to the United States either. I think that's kind of worldwide as people are becoming more aware of cigarette smoke and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I know here in Utah we're pretty strict because we have distant regulations. You can't smoke within
25 feet.
Within 25 feet of a building or an entrance to the building, more anything.
I think that's the same as California.
Okay.
Our Utah laws are very much similar to California's clean air.
Okay. That's probably what we modeled it after then.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the question about visiting other countries, I've only been up to the borders of Canada and down to the borders of Mexico. I've been to some cities that feel like it's a different country. They just do things a little differently, and that's okay sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely love seeing different types of culture, different types of mentality, right? And so even though I haven't been down to another country, I have a wife that's from Mexico, and our whole family does Mexican folkloric dancing. So we get to experience these different pieces of the culture even here in the United States. It's kind of cool to see it and let the kids still experience it. It's not the same as being down there, not at all.
Right.
But we still get to have little bits of that culture. Okay, gonna continue on this question a little bit before we move to the next one. What are some countries you would like to visit? Go back to Bastion.
Countries. I'm trying to think of some. Like, yeah, Japan. Japan's one I want to go to. It like we've said in a prior episode, there's the restaurants that were themed to different things. Like
you want to eat out of a toilet.
No.
He just has to go to California for that. So after this episode, we did realize there was one in China, but there's also one right there in California
LA.
where you could go eat
Yeah.
out of a toilet. But yeah, themed restaurants.
Like the theme restaurants, the Pokemon Cafe, the Final Fantasy, the different city-state ones. Those are ones I would like to go to. So, Japan.
Japan's definitely on my bucket list as well as a place to visit. I've had a lot of people that I've known that have visited there talk about wanting to go back, wanting to go visit again, and talk about how awesome it was. And so that's definitely one of the countries I want to go to. Mexico, of course, being that my wife is from Mexico. I want to go down there and experience some of the culture firsthand. I really enjoy learning languages and culture, and so that's something I want to do.
Yeah, I'd like to tour throughout Europe. You know, the different countries of Europe.
That would be cool. I've heard some really cool things about that. You had a daughter that toured Europe, right?
Yeah. She went on a historical building tour. So they were looking at historical architecture for one of her classes.
And that's really cool. They have much older and much more historic architecture than we have here. It predates our entire, not this country, but the European civilization that lives here, and not just European civilization. So it predates the European settlement here in the United States or the America area. That would be definitely pretty cool. She went there prior to Notre Dame being...
No.
But she went there right after.
Right after.
Okay.
Right after the fire. So
Wow.
they actually, Notre Dame was on their itinerary.
Wow.
And the fire happened. And then I think she went the next month.
That's crazy. No one expected that.
No.
I read something that I don't know if it's true, but that said that they're going to try to restore Notre Dame if possible.
They are trying.
Mm-hmm.
They are trying. Some of the big trials that they've run into is the historic leaded glass, because it's almost impossible to recreate it to the point that it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then paintings, of course.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely parts they can't restore, but they're going to try to do the best that they can. All right, moving on. Next topic, camels.
I think that's the most random topic we've had so far.
Really? More random than...
Justice?
Well, justice was random. We had another animal that we talked about.
Well, you talked about mosquitoes and rats.
Well, yes, that too.
The ninja flea.
All right, so camels, right?
Filthy beasts.
Yes.
Having been spit on by one at a zoo.
Ew.
Camels will spit.
Yeah, I've heard that they're spitting, like, sometimes it can go far.
I heard llamas spit too. Well, llamas and camels, I believe, are related, right?
I have no clue.
I think by, like, a little bit. But I think llamas are also, like, related slightly to sheep. Because of their super, like, furry bags.
So they cross a camel with a sheep and you get a llama? By the way, I'm not like a biologist or zoologist. That is not fact.
What do you mean? It's fact. We're telling it right now, right here.
But imagine, so camels, they can store water and food in their humps so that they don't have to drink for a while. Imagine if you could do that, right? You just had to drink like once a week or once every couple days, but you had to drink enough to store in a hump in your back all this water.
I don't have the hump, but I do the other thing. Drink water once a week.
Drink water once a week. You should probably get that checked out, right?
Yeah, I try to drink more water, but like I've been able to be okay with that.
Dehydration's a thing, Bastian.
So are kidney stones.
Yes.
No, I think the resiliency of camels is amazing. You know, historically, you had like the Arabics that had horses and stuff like this, but camels could much outlast a horse in harsh conditions.
Right. They didn't have the speed that horses had. A lot of times they would use horses because they could travel much faster. But yet camels could carry much more weight and resist much more, like you were saying, the rough conditions. And so that was definitely a pack animal of choice in the desert areas, where in other areas it may have been like a mule or something. Mule wouldn't last that long out there in the deserts. So the only experience I've had with camels is at the zoo.
Me too.
Other than seeing them on shows or reading about them. One of my kids even did a research paper on the dromedary camel.
Kill.
And So that's the extent that I have. I don't have any knowledge beyond there. Leading from camels, which some people may consider a pet, into dogs.
I have a question with this one.
Okay?
And this could be a poll. Large dogs versus small dogs.
Large dogs.
Medium to large.
If you get anything smaller than a medium dog, it's not a dog, it's a rat.
It depends on the size. So, okay, what do people define as small? What's defined as medium? What's defined as large? Okay?
Yeah.
We have a dog that I would consider medium, but some might consider small.
Uh-huh.
But when she has all her fur on, she definitely, to me, falls more in the medium category. But then we have a dog that some may put in the large category, but I still put in the medium category. So we had, for a period of time, a Great Dane Mastiff mix. That was in the large category.
Oh, yeah.
So to me, lab is not necessarily large. It would be more medium.
Mm-hmm.
But to people who have more your smaller, your Chihuahuas, your Pomeranians, your Yorkies, a lab would be considered large for them. So I guess when we're determining small, medium, and large, that's very much by the individual,
It is.
right?
It is, because our dog is 15 pounds, and he actually, if you buy dog clothes, he fits into a medium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would consider your dog borderline medium there, with the small end.
But much bigger than him, I don't think I would go.
Okay.
Number one, they have a lot more energy the bigger that they get.
And I've always thought the other way around. I've always thought the bigger they get, the less energy they have, and the smaller dogs are the ones who nonstop.
I mean, our bigger dog barely has any energy inside the house, and will just like have all this energy outside only.
Mm-hmm. She's 2 years old.
Yeah.
And
terrified of new people.
You're terrified of new people. She loves to run around outside, but she gets inside the house and she'll just lay there. Our other one that's probably 12 years old, 11, 12 years old.
Our dog's 12. I think you got Weta about the same time, right?
Okay, probably. Yeah, so like 11, 12 years old. She still is full of energy inside the house, running around, jumping around, everything. And so I've always seen it the opposite. However, there are exceptions. Labs are usually high energy dogs. Boxers are usually goofy, high energy dogs. At least in my opinion. Dobermans,
Rottweilers have a lot of energy.
Right. But a Great Dane and Mastiff, yeah, Great Danes like to play, but for short bursts. I usually don't see them with endless energy. Usually afterwards, they just want to lounge around and be lazy. Mastiffs, I always see them as lazy. They're just lazy little teddy bears. But then a Chihuahua on the other end,
or a Yorkie,
they don't know when to stop running, or they don't know when to stop running their lungs either. Right? So I guess it goes down to breed too.
Yeah.
So what about the original dogs?
Original dogs, I actually really love the look of the Alsatians, which became the German Shepherds. Mm-hmm. The Alsatians is the smaller version, before they were bred with the wolves to make them larger and stuff like that. But I actually love the look of the Alsatians, the wolf-like dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember reading something about like some older wolves. Basically, there was some slightly like nicer wolves that would follow the humans sometimes for like protection stuff, for like food, that eventually they became domesticated, and that's how we got our first dogs, stuff like that. I remember reading something like that.
Being pack animals, they would look for the pack that could provide for them the most. And with certain humans being hunters and everything and providing for them, sometimes we would provide more than the pack would. and therefore lead to domestication. I love the look of huskies. To me, they're a little too dominant of animals.
Oh yeah,
because they're very much pack animals. People have them and they love them. I wouldn't say I have the amount of time to dedicate to them because of the pack mentality.
I have to agree. You know, just like I like the look of the Alsatians and the German Shepherds, I wouldn't have the energy to properly care for one.
Right. I think we're all mostly dog people here. I know in our family we grew up mostly as dog people. I know one of my sisters has kind of joined the dark side and become a cat person.
Very much.
But cats could be a discussion for another day.
Cats and guinea pigs and
Cats are cute, but I wouldn't have one as a pet. I went over to like my cousin's house, the one that they have the cats. I did get scratched by one of the cats, and that's painful. And like you have like a scar from it for a couple days. Where a dog, same thing. You'll still have the scar, but I mean, it's less painful.
But the dog will love you afterwards. Mm-hmm. The cat shows no regret.
The cat will even lick where it, or the dog will even lick where it.
Right, trying to make you feel better.
Yeah.
The cat just runs.
Maybe next time we get the conversation of like evil creatures, then we could talk about cats. But we're sticking with dogs right now. All right, we're actually going to move away from dogs. Okay, so this is a 3-part. What defines a sport? Is fishing a sport? And how about video game tournaments?
I would say what defines a sport is you actually actively doing something. Like, because you have where soccer is considered a sport. You're actively kicking the ball, actively like trying to get points and stuff like that. Like I said, actively doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Dance, I would consider a sport because you're actively dancing, unless you don't. But if you're actively dancing, and when you do performances, technically there's competitions for it, like there is for different sports. So actively doing something.
That's interesting, and that goes along with the second one. You know, the fishing a sport, because fly fishing is considered a sport, but regular fishing is not.
Because you're not actively, you'll throw it in there for like, and then wait for a while and never get a bite. So you're not actively doing anything. Basically, you're just waiting there for a while, and then something may bite, so you're reeling in. But that's not you just like actively doing something every single minute, throwing it back in, pulling, throwing it back in, pulling, like that. So regular fishing would not be considered a sport. Sport.
I can see that. I, on the other hand, would consider fishing a sport. I think sport comes down to, like you're saying, actively doing something, but also has it been determined to have some type of competition built around it.
Right.
Even hunting is considered a sport, right? And there is competition there within the hunting field. Right. Shooting guns is considered a sport. Going to the range, whether it's guns or archery or whatever, is still considered a sport. So I think fishing can be considered a sport, even though I don't go out there looking to catch the biggest fish, even though the ones I catch are this big. If you can see my arms, they're like as far apart as they can be. You know, I probably catch the tiny little ones, right?
I don't think you can see your arms.
Or the slapping people with a fish is a sport. So we were out there on a raft, my brother and I, and it's just the two of us, barely fitting out on the raft, reeling in the fish, and as I pull it out of the water, it smacks him in the face. So what does he do? He catches a fish and then smacks me in the face with a fish. So I guess if you're going by fish smacking, that could be a sport. It's like throwing in the gauntlet, you know?
Well, and you have professional bass fishers, you know, and to them, it's very much a sport.
Right.
You know, they actually get paid for it. You know, so yeah, I would have to say yes, it is a sport.
Okay, so how about video game tournaments?
I would count that as a sport. You wanna know why? Because technically you're still actively pressing some buttons And at school,
Your thumbs get tired.
At school, we have esports club, which is basically you doing a bunch of like games like Smash Bros and stuff like that. But there's like different tournaments that you can actually do at school that give you different things. Like you can not oh my gosh, you can gain different things. Like you can get
like win things.
Yeah, win
prizes.
things, win different prizes if you win. Let's just say at one point, in I think it was 6th grade, we did a little tournament of our own, Smash Bros. Wise, and my friend said, "Whoever wins gets a shiny Eevee." Well, I won, and I saw my friend again after 3 years, and I told him, "Hey, I remember that you owe me a shiny Eevee," and he told me, "Oh yeah, my save data got deleted." So he still owes me one.
Maybe someday.
Sometime.
So, my thought on video game tournaments being a sport, I think there's a clarification between sports and esports.
Mhm.
But if we're considering shooting, so riflery or even archery as a sport, it's not necessarily something that physically getting you sweating either. It's something that requires focus and skill, and that's how a lot of these video game tournaments are. So I would consider them to fall under the esport category, as long as there's definition of the electronic sports. It's done virtually. You're not actively doing the acts yourself, but you're controlling it. It still requires a lot of skill. Some esports people have more skill and coordination than a full baseball team.
Well, pool is considered a sport.
True.
8-ball, 9-ball, snooker, they're considered sports. Very much. And you're not exerting yourself a lot. Mentally you are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of accuracy and there's a lot of things like this. So, I don't think every sport has to be physical exertion, but it has to have an exertion of some sort.
Okay, but then where do we draw the line then? So I'm going to go there. Okay, I was going to mention pinball, but I'll go, how about a spelling bee, right? So is that not a sport? That's a competition. You're mentally exerting yourself. So where do we draw the line as to what's a sport and what's not a sport?
They have mathletes.
They do have mathletes, right? So is that a sport? So I think there has to be, I don't know. Here just got done saying, oh yeah, I think video game is a sport because it takes these, the skill and everything if you're actually going to compete. I don't think a casual gamer's an athlete, right? No. But I do think we have to draw a line. Because then we can say any type of competition activity is a sport. Then we could say, well, spelling bee is a sport. We could say chess is a sport. Chess has a competition. There's a tournament, but I don't consider it a sport. I may be the only one here, by the way you guys are looking at me, but I don't consider chess a sport.
Sport because that's the only sport I can play, probably.
And what was your win ratio?
I don't remember. I didn't do really well on my win ratio. But I would still count video games as a sport because they can do like how different football and soccer things do. They can sometimes do international stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Pokemon tournaments can go worldwide or international sometimes. That eventually goes down to like 2 people from who knows where. And if you win, you can win different things.
Okay.
I've heard that before. I don't know if that's not true or if it's illegal, but we will. But, yeah.
Now, I'm the oldest of the group, and it's like I can remember back when, there was a very clear distinction. That sports were only physical.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't play the sports, then you were
a
nerd or geek or whatever.
Right, and that's kind of what I remember even back when I was a kid. It was they were for your athletic people, your people that had the stamina or the strength or whatever. And I think there's the evolution of that, of realizing that, yeah, your dexterity and your strength is important, but so is also the mental dexterity and the mental strength. And that's where like pool comes into play, right? And we've even seen a little bit of an evolution, in my opinion, in some of the standard sports, such as even basketball and football. They play a little differently than they did back when we were younger. I think a little more on the technical, a little more on the mental side than they used to be. It used to be just, pure skill, and you'd have Michael Jordan dominating the whole NBA, where now I think it's a little more
the whole
team focused than it was at that point.
A dumb analogy, but it kind of reminds me of like a D&D thing where you have your character sheet. Sure, your strength and dexterity might be good, but if you're like a bard, that's not all you want to put everything into. You're gonna need to go into your skills, play into your skills, and you'll need that teamwork and stuff like that in D&D as in real life.
That is totally true. Somebody who goes to the gym all the time and is really strong doesn't mean they're going to be a great golfer, because golfer takes a whole different amount of finesse and a different type of strength than just straight brawn.
Or a NASCAR driver. NASCAR's a sport.
Yes, it is. But that uses a lot more your visual field and your reaction time. And so again, that mental dexterity.
Is that more like a video game then? So.
I mean, kind of. I mean, there's driving games where you're looking at that, but yet
attention.
So would you class NASCAR in the same line as a video game tournament? Because yes, you're physically driving the car, but technically in the video game tournament, say you're doing Gran Turismo or something like this, you're driving the car, you're just using a controller.
So should we determine the difference between the e-sport, and this is for our determination, I don't know what the legal definitions and determinations are out there, but for our e-sport and regular sport is the amount of physical risk you're actually undertaking by way of doing it. So if the difference between going out there and playing football or competing in Madden is if I'm actually out there, I risk any injury to myself as opposed to just injury to a digital character. If I'm driving NASCAR and I get into a wreck, I risk my own life, my own safety, as opposed to just some digital ones and zeros out there that have injury. So maybe that could be the distinction here, is within sports and the competition within sports, there's some physical input and some physical risk. Even when we get into pool, I may go and sprain my wrist because I'm trying to get a spin on the ball and end up pushing the cue too hard or wrongly, and I end up hurting my wrist. So there's still, even though it's tiny, a little bit of physical risk there.
Technically,
there's also the risk, if you make me mad, I'm picking up the cue ball and throwing it.
that too.
I mean, technically, there is physical risk in video game tournaments.
Carpal tunnel?
If somebody gets... Oh my gosh. Somebody gets mad, they chuck a remote at your head. I've never had this happen.
You've been playing with your brothers too long, or your brother too long. I think you were the one throwing it.
No. No, but I think that you can also get physical injury, because I've actually been in a tournament where somebody's gotten really mad that something's been thrown, or like they'll shut off the switch and just slam it down so that this and that, but
that's not inherent risk into the activity itself. That would be like saying the inherent risk in a golf tournament is somebody getting mad and punching you there. That's kind of the outline. I was going to say hockey, but that is the inherent risk in hockey, is the fact that a fight may break out.
I was on a golf practice tee when I tore my rotator cuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was just practicing for golf.
Yeah, a lot of people discount golf. They think, oh, it's not risky at all. Oh my gosh.
It is.
The movement of your body and everything, there's a lot of moving parts that you can hurt.
I wish there was.
Or maybe that's just because I'm getting older and don't know how to move.
I wish it was like an Angry Birds game where, not Angry Birds game, like a golf game where you can put like an Angry Bird face ball, just like chuck the ball. Whee!
I think there's a place that's like a virtual golf place where
Yes.
you could do stuff just like
Yeah.
Top Golf or
Golf
whatever.
has an Angry Birds mode.
Mm-hmm. Your mother went and did that with her work.
I want to go there.
And she keeps saying she wants to take you guys, but we haven't gone. Yeah, she went and did that and did the Angry Bird mode. So, all right, for the sake of time, let's continue on to the next topic. So, what benefit do you bring to the group when you hang out with friends?
I don't
None.
bring any.
Okay, end of discussion.
I don't
Just
bring
kidding.
any. I'm the follower. Like, this may sound bad, but my friends are like doing not like something super stupid, but like joking around and being stupid. I'll jump in the joking around as long as it's not towards anybody. If it's towards somebody, I'll be like, "Hey guys, it's not funny." But
So you're
like
the
I'm
Jiminy
the
Cricket?
follower. Yeah, sort of. But I'm like
follower
the
on the
follower.
staff, but
Yeah. And I'm sort of the one that's like, okay, if this is gonna go badly, I'm walking out. I don't want to be a witness, and I don't want to be an accomplice here. So, well, technically, it wouldn't be a bad thing to be like a witness if something happened to one of my friends. Some like kid just like drove in his car, just like ends up by us, gets out of his car, beats up my friend. I get a photo of like the license plate, so I go and like I don't know.
that's totally random.
I'm a witness of that, and I have proof. So
I have ADHD, so I just bring randomness. Squirrel.
All right, so what benefit do you bring? Why did we invite you here today?
I have no clue.
why are you important? Okay, like why are you important? Why should you be here? It's like a job interview.
No, I think I'm very random about things. It's just the ADHD brain.
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes that could be a benefit you add to a group, right? Is you keep things fresh and lively and keep the randomness coming. By this time, I should have had enough time to think about this, but I was listening to you guys. So, what benefit do you to bring to a group when you hang out with friends?
You have to have friends first.
Oh.
And with that being said, we appreciate you. Okay. I have a few.
Your mom is not your friend.
Facebook says different. No, I think.
No, I know you have friends.
I think just kind of listening and I think humor as well, even though most of it comes in the form of
Dad jokes.
sarcasm or dad jokes, and some of it's very painful humor. I do think I add that to a situation and kind of break the ice a little bit, especially when things start to get a little tense. Granted, sometimes I need to know when to lay off of the humor, because I could just escalate the situation. But in other cases, I think it definitely helps to de-escalate. All right, well, thanks for joining us today, Galen.
Anytime.
One more question?
One last
Or
comment.
one last comment?
I think what else I bring to the group is the snacks. Because seriously, I feel like I'm the one that's like always bringing like these snacks. Oh, I'll contribute this and that, and I'm the only one bringing stuff.
That's why you have to figure out what the people in the group don't like and then bring those. And then they'll stop asking you to bring snacks because nobody wants to eat the snacks that you bring. Problem solved.
More for me, I guess.
Anyways, this episode went a little bit long. We expected that, having a guest on the show. Again, we invite you, if you enjoyed it, to follow the podcast, get notified of any new episodes coming out, as well as participate in the poll. Give us your feedback, and we'll catch up with you next time.